The hidden truth nobody told you. Avoidant love didn't just test your patience. It revealed your power. You told yourself it was patience. You called it loyalty. You even wore it like a badge of honor. The one who stays, the one who understands, the one who doesn't give up easily. But if you are brutally honest, it wasn't always strength. Sometimes it was fear disguised as devotion. The chase began so subtly, you didn't recognize it as a chase. It started as curiosity, then concern, then emotional investment. And before you knew it, your energy was orbiting around someone who barely turned their head to notice. You checked your phone more often than you checked your own emotions. You reread messages looking for hidden meanings like a detective investigating a crime scene that never existed. A delayed reply became a personal insult. A short response became a storm in your mind. You didn't just want their attention. You wanted reassurance that you mattered. And the more distant they became, the louder your internal voice whispered, "Try harder." You started crafting perfect sentences before pressing send. You calculated the right time to text so you wouldn't appear desperate. You laughed louder at their jokes. You forgave quicker than you healed. You convinced yourself that if you just loved better, communicated better, gave more space, demanded less, everything would align. But love is not an exam you pass by overperforming. The painful revelation arrives slowly. Effort does not manufacture emotional availability. You cannot negotiate warmth from someone committed to emotional distance. The illusion was not that they would change. The illusion was that you could control the outcome through sacrifice. In chasing them, you began losing fragments of yourself so gradually that it felt normal. Your standards softened, your boundaries blurred. Your needs became optional while theirs became urgent priorities. You weren't just pursuing a person, you were pursuing validation, certainty, and emotional safety. And every time they pulled away, your instinct was to move closer, believing proximity would fix what absence created. But the more you chased, the more the imbalance widened. Attraction turned into anxiety. Curiosity transformed into obsession. Hope started sounding like self-neglect. Then came the realization that hit like cold water on a sleepless night. You were running toward someone who wasn't running toward you. That awareness doesn't break you, it wakes you, because suddenly you see the truth. Connection is not built through pursuit. It is built through mutual presence. You recognize that genuine interest doesn't need persuasion. You learn that emotional reciprocity is not a luxury. It is the foundation. The illusion dissolves, and in its place stands a powerful understanding. You're not meant to audition for love. You are meant to experience it without shrinking, without overcompensating, without begging for emotional crumbs and calling it a meal. The chase taught you endurance, but it also taught you discernment. It showed you the difference between persistence and self-betrayal. And once you see that difference, you cannot unsee it. You begin to walk instead of run. You begin to observe instead of assume. You begin to value energy exchange rather than emotional gambling. The illusion didn't just end. It transformed into clarity. And clarity is the moment you realize you were never meant to chase someone into choosing you. You were meant to choose yourself first. You never asked for a mirror, yet one appeared in the form of someone emotionally unavailable. It wasn't a mirror reflecting your appearance or your achievements. It reflected the quiet insecurities you kept hidden even from yourself. Their distance echoed louder than any criticism you had ever heard. When they withdrew, it wasn't just their absence that hurt. It was the silence forcing you to confront feelings you had buried for years. Why did their indifference sting more than rejection from others? Because somewhere deep inside, their behavior aligned with a familiar emotional pattern. It felt like an old wound reopening, one you thought time had sealed. You began questioning your worth, your attractiveness, your intelligence, your lovability. You replayed conversations, searching for mistakes, blaming yourself for reactions that were never fully under your control. But the mirror wasn't there to shame you. It was there to reveal the narratives you had unknowingly accepted. Narratives that whispered you must earn affection. Narratives that suggested love is conditional. narratives that convince you being chosen defines your value. The avoidant partner didn't plant these beliefs, they exposed them. And exposure, although uncomfortable, is the first step toward liberation. You started noticing patterns, how quickly you apologized, how rarely you asked for reassurance, how often you minimized your needs to avoid conflict. The mirror revealed that your fear wasn't losing them, it was facing yourself without external validation. This awareness is not gentle. It feels like standing in bright light after years in dim rooms. But within that brightness lies power. Because once you recognize the root of your emotional reactions, you stop misplacing responsibility. You realize their withdrawal is not proof of your inadequacy, it is evidence of their limitations. You understand that your desire for connection is not weakness, it is humanity. The mirror shows you your emotional depth, your loyalty, your resilience, qualities you once undervalued because they weren't immediately reciprocated. Instead of asking, why am I not enough? You begin asking, why am I measuring my worth through someone else's capacity to love? That question reshapes everything. It transforms pain into insight. It transforms insecurity into self-awareness. And self-awareness becomes emotional armor, not to block love, but to filter it. The mirror doesn't just reveal wounds, it highlights strengths you overlooked. It teaches you that healing is not about becoming less emotional, it is about becoming emotionally aligned with your own truth. And when that alignment happens, you no longer fear reflections, you respect them. Emotional scarcity has a unique way of sharpening perception. When affection becomes unpredictable, your mind initially enters survival mode. You crave consistency like air, and every inconsistency feels like suffocation. You start overanalyzing small gestures because they are all you have to interpret. A single affectionate message feels monumental. A brief moment of closeness feels like victory. Yet over time, the exhaustion builds. Mental fatigue replaces excitement. You grow tired of guessing, tired of hoping, tired of filling emotional gaps with imagination. And exhaustion does something extraordinary. It strips away illusions. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop labeling confusion as chemistry. You begin seeing patterns without emotional filters. Scarcity forces evaluation. It makes you question why minimal effort once felt significant. It compels you to differentiate between intensity and stability. You realize emotional unpredictability is not thrilling, it is draining. This clarity doesn't arrive as anger, it arrives as calm awareness. The fog lifts. You recognize that love is not supposed to feel like a puzzle missing pieces. It is not meant to trigger constant self-doubt. Emotional scarcity becomes the teacher you never expected. It teaches you that attention without intention is noise. It teaches you that presence without commitment is temporary comfort. It reveals how easily the human mind confuses rarity with value. Something being rare does not make it precious. Sometimes it simply means it is unavailable. This understanding reshapes your standards. You stop measuring affection by frequency and start measuring it by sincerity. You become less impressed by grand gestures and more attentive to consistent behavior. Scarcity also strengthens emotional independence. You learn to sit with your feelings instead of escaping them through distractions or external validation. You develop patience, but not the kind that tolerates neglect, the kind that respects timing and mutual readiness. Clarity transforms your emotional vocabulary. You begin distinguishing between desire and compatibility, attraction and alignment, connection and convenience. The chaos that once confused you becomes information guiding you. Emotional scarcity, though painful, becomes the catalyst for emotional intelligence. You stop chasing signals and start trusting patterns. You stop negotiating your needs and start honoring them. And in that shift, confusion loses its power because clarity replaces it with direction. There is a moment so subtle yet so powerful that it feels almost invisible from the outside. Nothing dramatic happens, no confrontation, no announcement, just a quiet internal decision. Your emotional world is no longer public property. You begin reclaiming territory you didn't realize you had surrendered. Previously, your mood depended on their attention. Message could brighten your day. Silence could darken it instantly. But gradually you start noticing this dependency, and awareness sparks change. You begin setting emotional boundaries, not as walls, but as filters. You stop oversharing with someone who offers minimal empathy. You stop explaining your feelings to ears that aren't listening. You start choosing conversations that nourish rather than drain. Reclaiming emotional territory doesn't mean becoming distant. It means becoming intentional. You invest energy where it flows back. You acknowledge your needs without apology. You realize that emotional security is not granted by others. It is cultivated internally. The shift is empowering because it restores balance. You no longer feel obligated to prove your worth through endurance. You stop tolerating neglect under the illusion of loyalty. You become selective with your vulnerability, understanding that openness is powerful but must be reciprocated. Emotional territory also includes self-talk. You replace harsh internal criticism with understanding. You stop blaming yourself for others' emotional limitations. You treat your feelings as valid data instead of inconveniences. This reclamation is not loud, it is steady. You begin enjoying your own company without guilt. You engage in activities that fulfill you rather than distract you. You rediscover passions you paused while prioritizing someone else's emotional unpredictability. Gradually, you notice a transformation. Your happiness becomes less reactive and more stable. You don't wait for permission to feel valued. You don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. Emotional territory becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. And from this sanctuary, you interact with others not from desperation, but from choice. Choice changes everything because it replaces fear with confidence. You don't fear losing someone when you know you haven't lost yourself. Detachment carries a reputation of coldness, yet true detachment is warm, grounded, and deeply respectful. It is not the absence of feeling, it is the presence of self-respect. When you detach without bitterness, you are not shutting down emotions. You are reorganizing priorities. You stop tying your peace to someone else's behavior. You allow yourself to care without allowing care to consume you. This form of detachment feels like breathing deeply after years of shallow breaths. You release the urge to control outcomes. You stop replaying conversations seeking alternate endings. You accept that closure sometimes comes from understanding rather than dialogue. Detachment without bitterness also preserves dignity. You do not need to villainize someone to move forward. You recognize their limitations without making them enemies. This perspective keeps your heart open while protecting your energy. It is emotional maturity in motion. Instead of clinging to resentment, you channel that energy into growth. You forgive not because they asked, but because you refuse to carry emotional weight that no longer serves you. Detachment teaches you that letting go is not losing, it is making space. Space for clarity, space for healthier connections, space for inner peace. You learn to observe rather than react. You respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively. Emotional storms lose intensity because you are no longer fueling them with expectation. The state does not numb you, it strengthens you. You remain compassionate, but not self-sacrificing. You remain hopeful, but not naive. Detachment without bitterness allows love to evolve rather than disappear. You appreciate memories without longing for repetition. You accept endings without dramatizing them. The emotional freedom that follows is profound. You walk forward lighter, not because you cared less, but because you learned to care wisely. The final transformation is not about another person. It is about the relationship you build with yourself. The love that changes everything is not sudden or explosive. It grows quietly like sunrise light, filling a dark room inch by inch. You begin noticing how you speak to yourself, how you treat your time, how you honor your boundaries. You invest in your mental health, your physical well-being, your creative interests. You stop postponing happiness, waiting for someone else's readiness. Self-love shifts your expectations from external approval to internal alignment. You no longer measure your worth by attention received. You measure it by authenticity expressed. This love is practical, not abstract. It influences daily decisions, the people you allow close, the environments you choose, the habits you cultivate. You start recognizing red flags without romanticizing them. You trust intuition more than excuses. Self-love also enhances empathy because you understand your emotions deeply. You become kinder to others without being careless with yourself. Confidence emerges naturally, not as arrogance but as quiet certainty.